Okay guys, Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House, and I am very excited about this next piece of content. As you know, I pitch all day about how I think health science and functional medicine will be some of the biggest bull markets of my lifetime, even though my portfolio is overweight commodities given the year we had in 2020. I am aggressively looking for opportunities in the health science sector. Now, as is the case with everything I do when I'm looking for investment opportunities, I start by identifying the smartest people in the business who can help me develop my thesis, right? Identify blind spots, spot opportunities, all of this stuff. And my next guest is Dr. William Seeds, who is arguably the leading physician when it comes to cellular medicine. So we get into what exactly cellular medicine is, why it's so disruptive, and why I think investors should be paying attention. So this was a thoroughly enjoyable conversation with one of the smartest brains in the sector. I met Dr. William Seeds 3 years ago at his conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. I was I'm pretty sure the only individual in attendance who was not a doctor, but I was front row for 3 days straight listening as he walked the audience through the disruptive nature and coming innovations on the back of peptide therapies and cellular medicine. So we get into all this today. He's a fantastic guest. I'm definitely going to be inviting him back. I hope you enjoy this, and if you do, click subscribe, turn on notifications. I'd love to have you join the tribe. And then beneath this video, there's a pinned comment where you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter. I publish every Friday, it's free, and I debrief these conversations and plenty others that I have throughout the week. I share my biggest lessons and takeaways and any actions I'm taking with my cash. I'd love to have you join the tribe.
What I love to do is introduce the right people to the right people. I assemble the smartest people I can think of or reach out to carry that conversation, and that's exactly what I've done today. Please give my panel a round of applause. Welcome.
Okay guys, Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House, and it is my pleasure to introduce my next guest, the world's leader in cellular medicine, Dr. William Seeds. Dr. Seeds, thanks so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, I'm really looking forward to this discussion. And like I said before I hit record, I've been looking forward to this discussion for 2 years because it was 2 years ago that I attended your conference in Las Vegas that really opened my eyes to peptide medicine, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Now, for all my viewers, I know this one's a bit off the beaten track. I typically cover macro finance, we talk commodities, we talk early stage tech and all this stuff, but I've been saying, and I believe this, health science will be the biggest bull market of my lifetime because I want to feel better, live longer, think faster, all of that good stuff. And I think most people do. So the world is the market. And today what I want to do is pick Dr. Seeds' brain. I want to understand the macro behind peptide therapy, some of the most exciting applications, most disruptive applications. I'm going to steal your words, Dr. Seeds. 2 years ago at your conference in regards to peptide therapy, you said, we are going to change the world with this. And it got me very excited. So why don't we begin, assuming my audience knows nothing about peptide therapies and peptide medicines, and as simply as you can, tell me, what are peptides and why are they significant?
Well, peptides are nothing foreign to any of us that are familiar in the framework of the human body as far as looking at signaling agents like hormones and enzymes and receptors, basic transmitters. Peptides are just amino acids that are connected by peptide bonds, and they have a carboxyl group on one end of it and an amine group on the other. They can be 2 amino acids, 3 amino acids. They can be anywhere up to 50, where they can be start to be called polypeptides, and they can be cylindrical, they can be helical, there can be different conformational changes, but basically they're signaling agents. And when we're talking about these peptides, we're talking about signaling agents that we're familiar with that we try to influence to bring back cellular homeostasis, meaning we're trying to bring a cell back to it's a state of where it's comfortable and functions in an efficient manner, and it actually utilizes its genetic code to do the things that to use its own natural intelligence in the cell to kind of keep that environment at a optimal environment. And in doing so, that's kind of a profound statement. If we're talking about being able to influence precisely specific areas of signaling, which kind of makes sense. You know, if you're going after a problem, you don't want to hit something with maybe with a bazooka or a cannon. You want to hit it with precision. You want to go right specifically to where your offenders are, and then potentially have many meaningful downstream effects that are influential in how you may change this signaling of a cell, because one cell can affect another cell, etc. So that understanding that a peptide is a signaling agent brings us to this profound, look at, well, my gosh, you mean there's a potential of being able to not manipulate, but influence and modulate a cell in the right direction. That's natural, not foreign, but natural to that cell to improve its efficiencies. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at improving the efficiencies of a cell, because when a cell is efficient, we're staying away from all the bad actors that lead to aging, and yes, aging, that lead to diseases, that lead to metabolic problems, that lead to cancer. I mean, I've hit a lot of areas there with just I guess what I'm trying to give you is what you're looking for, this macro 30,000 foot view of, okay, well, what are we talking about? Well, it's that profound. It's being able to understand. So this is where understanding the molecular pathways of a cell and how a cell thinks and how it mitigates problems and how it prepares for problems and how it solves its problems. And if you have that understanding, my gosh, you've got all kinds of areas that are significant in specific treatment areas, all the way from tissue injury to metabolism, to disease states. And so you've got this spectrum of an environment that is ready to be conquered in a new light. I see as really using information and understanding of a cell to stop all these things that are costing billions of dollars every year and changing the face of healthcare and making it even more difficult to treat patients when we lose sight of, hey, wait a second, let's go all the way to the beginning. And if we focus on the beginning and how a cell becomes a problem, then maybe we can start working on solving diseases. But at the same time, we can inhibit that process from even happening.
Right.
And if you think about it, I know people don't like this when I say it, but I'm a big proponent of I believe, I look at aging as a disease. Aging is a disease because it is the number one influencer of metabolic disease, cardiac disease, neurodegenerative disease, immune diseases, cancer, you name it. The older you get, the higher your chances are of having all of those, being in all those categories, right? So aging, actually, if we understand aging and how that affects the cell, and we can do things to improve how that cell ages. I'm not talking about, I'm not one of those people who are like, hey, I'm going to make you live till you're 140, or we're going to live till we're 160. We're not at that stage. We're all about let's live our life to the fullest we can every day. I'm 60 years old, and I'm doing things that I was doing when I was 20, and I'm doing them better. I can run faster. I can think faster. I can jump higher. I'm stronger. My endurance is better during the day. I mean, you name it, I can cover every one of those things, and I dominate every year that I progress. There's no reason for us to think that we can't age and be better than we were the year before, 10 years before, 20 years before, because we can. And I'm sure is maybe you caught that influence of what I was trying to do. What I was talking is I walk the talk, and I'm not, if I'm not there to show the possibilities, which I think are even more cerebral than people understand, because I absolutely, every day I get smarter. And it's because I do all of these things to work on cell efficiency. And it only makes sense that if you're trying to make something more efficient, it's going to function better. And you're going to be able to adapt, right? How do things grow? How do things get better? It's called adaption. You can adapt and change and refocus. And that's kind of what this process is. So I guess I should stop talking because I could just keep going, but I want you to be able to ask me questions. I just kind of got off key there, but there's a lot to this. And
yeah. No, you didn't get off key, honestly, and I can keep listening. This is exactly why I wanted you to come on the show, and why I'm grateful to have you here, because you do walk the walk, and I sat in the audience for 3 days in the front row. I'm not a doctor. I was surrounded by physicians who were there for credits to further their profession. I was just there out of personal interest, and you had me on the edge of my seat because this stuff is very, very exciting. And so, I'm going to botch it if I try to summarize, but essentially, as we age, our cells become less efficient. If we can make them more efficient, that's the optimal medicine, right? Better than any kind of exogenous therapy that we could apply, right? We make our cells as efficient as they were in our youth, if not more so. Can you make this more granular for us, Dr. Seeds, and talk about some specific applications, whether they're the most known chronic diseases or most exciting optimization tactics that you can apply peptide therapies to?
Well, I think the easiest one for people to grab onto is some easy things are to understand, aging is a difficult process because as we get older, we get smarter, and most of us, I hope we do. And you'd like to be able to use that wisdom for a long time, because as you find out that, boy, this wisdom becomes even more valuable as you get older. But if you can't keep that brain functioning at its high level, if it can't continue to adapt, if you're losing the process of cognitive thinking and execution and all of those things that you need always on top, that can be disheartening, as also your physical health may be winding down, as far as, achy joints and and maybe having difficulty with keeping your weight right, and just, you're your own worst enemy, because you can be very, very critical of yourself, and it can all take its toll over time of where you feel you've lost. And I think everybody needs to understand that it's just total BS, that your brain and your body are the most amazing, and I should say your body's the most amazing thing beyond our comprehension, that can adapt and continue to adapt no matter how much crap we throw at our bodies, no matter how many environmental factors are coming at us. We're a pretty amazing species in how we can fend off so many things every day, when every cell in your body has the opportunity to turn into a cancerous cell. You have all of these mechanisms to keep it under control. And there are actually ways that we can work with kind of changing how aging starts to turn the body off. And it's not that it's an issue that the body still has the ability to keep up with time. The body and brain still have that ability. They just have to be given, the cell has to be given the chance to keep that engine working at its top precision oriented aspect. And so by understanding how maybe some things change with this environment in a cell that we call cellular redox, and it all comes down to chemistry, really. But by controlling that environment that is influenced by certain hormones that your brain releases, by certain by the way the mitochondria functions in the cell, by how the nucleus and the mitochondria communicate. If you're aware of how things change, which we have a historical view and plenty of data to denote how aging affects our bodies every year as we age, okay? And we know these things. Well, if we know these things and how they change the cell function, and how the nucleus talks to the mitochondria, how the mitochondria does what its job is to influence power in the cell, to utilize oxygen you breathe in and make it into energy with the food you put in your body, which we call substrates, fatty acids, carbohydrates, and proteins. If you can put that all together and you understand how they all can work together in the right timing, and boy, you've got some formulas to really start working on changing how you age, meaning continuing to keep not just your not just your efficiencies of the cell, but how those affect your neurotransmitters and how you feel about the day and how you feel about how anxiety affects you, because there's so many things that happen as we age that take a toll on us. You know, we become unfortunately we become subservient to the environment. And I'm trying to tell you that you can change that environment, because this is where it gets into this big talk about your genetics or something that you have, and you can't change those. But this big term called epigenetics, about how environment, meaning what you put in your body, what you eat, ionizing radiation, pollution, stress in your workplace, relationships, how all of the viruses, bacteria, how all those things cause epigenetic changes in the genome, meaning they influence how a gene works. They won't change it, but they can influence how it works. Okay. Well, it all comes down to that epigenome that is reversible. That's the key here. The epigenome is reversible. The genome isn't. The epigenome is. So when you approach that in that type of process and understand that there's so many pieces to this, you got to go about it, that there is, it's why you as an investor probably, there's not just one answer or one. If somebody says, I've got the secret to this, it's bullshit, because that never works like that, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing in the body. It's not one pill. It's not one peptide. It's a multitude of diversity and multiple approaches to make everything work in like a symphony, like an orchestra works, to put something together that makes sense to the cell. And so you're working on many things at once. You're working because in the cell and in the body, it's not just about efficiencies. It's also about the immune system and how the immune system works with metabolism, which we're finding out has even more importance. And that's why neurodegenerative disease is all of a sudden has opened up. Big doors have opened because we're finding out that immune function is so important. And immune function has everything to do with cell efficiency. And so you can start to see these interplays in signaling, where if you understand how this works, you can start piecing through problems like diseases. So let's say you have an injury. Let's say we go to just simple things like you have a painful ligamentous injury.
I have a rotator cuff injury right now. Tendonitis and bursitis.
So you have a rotator cuff injury, and which could be a plethora of problems. It could be an interstitial tear of the tendon. It could be a full thickness tear. It could be inflammatory changes where you have a tendinosis. So they're all different stages of inflammation in the shoulder. So there's an environment in that shoulder that is affecting how the function of the shoulder works, how the muscle's going to engage, what's active, how those muscles affect other muscles around the shoulder, affect the neck, etc. So instead of maybe the approach of, okay, rotator cuff, let's see, I can fix it, or I can maybe work on if it needs to be fixed, or I can put you through therapy and working on other muscles around the shoulder girdle to help that cuff and take some of the stress off. I mean, you've got all these traditional approaches. Or what if I said, well, let's look at what are the mitigators of pain and what are the potential ways of dealing with inflammation without making it deleterious to the joint itself, like steroids can do, that they can harm. They can be good, but they can cause harm in a joint. So what if we had more precise ways of working on tissue healing at the cell level, where we're improving angiogenesis to the tendon, where we're improving collagen formation, where we're improving things that potentially we didn't have that opportunity before, but now we have cell signaling aspects of how we can go right to that area and do that. And at the same time, making it healthier. And what else? We're trying to stop the recurrence, stop re-injury, because re-injuries are always significant. Now, that's a very, that's an approach that I gave you is optimal, right? But there's so many variations in cuff injuries that, again, it has to be, in talking about that, there's ways to work with delivering these peptides, like intra-articular or systemically, and then utilizing these modalities like therapy, or combining them with surgery if it needs to be done, where you've got some amazing tools where you can get people back to activities faster, and you're mitigating problems with re-injury much more significantly when you can assure better fixation or better healing properties. or just pain in itself. I mean, pain is one of the biggest issues we deal with in our lifetime.
Yeah, right.
And so pain in itself is a very, it's an excellent way to look at this also, where, we've become a culture dependent on narcotics and pain type of medications, where what if I told you we approached it from, let's work at the cell level and let's talk about the signaling and let's change that signaling. So we're improving the cell function and also stopping that we're inhibiting that cell signaling that gives you the perception of pain.
Okay.
And that's real. We're doing that. We're changing that right now. We're changing that for chronic pain. We're changing that for failed surgeries. We're changing that for chronic injuries, chronic ligamentous, muscle. I mean, that's the great potential that's untouched. And so that's another easy one that people I think can grab onto. Diabetes. If we talk about disease processes, diabetes is becoming and here is where big pharma has actually caught on to this peptide process, where they're now, because big pharma has always been looking at building a molecule and then making that molecule do something, where you have to go through all these issues of rigorous testing and harmful agents and toxic effects. Well, they've gotten a lot smarter now to where, well, what if we look at this peptide side where, gosh, there are already signaling agents in the body, so we know there are less potential harm with toxic effects and reactions and so forth. So what if we focus there and in particular, look at what they've done with GLP-1 receptor agonists, which are peptides focused on for diabetes, which are changing the diabetic world and are incredible agents that are changing how we used to use insulin before and other agents, where now not only are we working on improving insulin and glucose, but we're working on improving cell efficiency and cell autophagy and all these words we use that people don't realize that some of these peptides are working, and they have multiple places where they can work. So that's the exciting part, that the fever of this is actually catching on, and there are roads that even now bigger corporations are very focused on, because it makes so much sense. I mean, it's
right. Right. Now, so that's interesting that when you talk about how it's catching on, because my question for you is going to be, when I go to really any doctor that I have access to, granted, I'm in Canada, I'm not sure if things move slower up here, but if I go to my MD, if I go to my naturopath, and I try to bring up the conversation of peptide therapy, I often get usually a blank stare, but at best it's super controversial, too new, we don't know much about it, maybe one day, but I never get a concrete solution. I never get options, and I have a real hard time even having a conversation, to be honest with you. So what are the barriers? Is it just that we're at the sort of that stage of innovation? I mean, things take a while to catch on. That's part of it. Or are there other factors that are slowing down adoption? What do you think?
Well, I think it's multifaceted. I think number one, in our education. So this is where I'm focused, is on education and the SSRP and what we do to educate medical healthcare providers in cellular medicine to bring everybody back. So this is the hard message. The hard message is this stuff complicated? Yeah, it is. But it's obtainable. The information is there, and it's like every hurdle. There's always difficulties in bringing about change. This this biochemistry and molecular pathology and biology of a cell can be very complicated, but it can also be very easy if it's presented in the right fashion. And in medical school, we went through some of these stages. You know, we went through these understanding the mitochondria and the Krebs cycle and oxidative phosphorylation and all of these important aspects of how a cell functions. But we never, and we were actually under this impression that that's what we would be treating. And then we kind of get through our education and we find out we're not even close to approaching it in that fashion, and that it's actually, we're not preventing disease. We're way down the road here where we just got to kind of, we got to stamp out fires.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a big mismatch there.
Right.
And that's where it starts. So the beauty of this cellular medicine is that it's gotten to a point now of where we have these agents and we have these modalities to actually get very precise and things that make sense and that can be validated in the literature and that can be presented where we had an understanding of how something worked. We knew that we kind of knew this was around, but no one ever put all the pieces together. Nobody put the clinical part with the pathway, pathology, biology, biochemistry. Nobody put that together.
Okay.
And that's what we're doing. And I think we're making tremendous headway. And the only reason we're making that headway is because we're improving outcomes. If we weren't improving outcomes, we would be nowhere. No one would keep listening to me. This is something that's it's growing, and I believe it's exponential because it's just amazing how many people we're collecting. So it's got to mean something when we're pulling in psychiatrists, oncologists, pathologists, microbiologists, pulmonologists, cardiologists, neurosurgeons, neurology, immunologists, orthopedics. When we're pulling all of these people together because they're all curious about this process, because we all know, we've all kind of, like I said, we all went through the process of understanding that there was real validation of understanding the cell, but we never got to connect it.
Okay.
But when we can connect it, the amazing thing is then you can talk across disciplines. That's why I'm able to, when you came to our courses, it's why people that really have an understanding of cellular medicine can cross all sides of medicine and talk with pathologists and talk with oncologists and talk with pulmonologists, because it's all about the validation of the cell and what's creating those disease processes in every one of those specialties. That is amazing when that stuff happens, because now the language becomes universal. Mm-hmm. And that's where I see the biggest validation of this coming together, when we got so many people from so many disciplines coming into this arena and contributing to the knowledge and to the growth of how we put this together to better define, I think, a whole new way of a common sense way of working in healthcare and in providing health, in doing things that make sense, that could, I think, it changed the world. And I think it's already happening, but it's hard, right? Because you've got to go back and learn things. You've got to know, you've got to go in some unfamiliar territory, which is always difficult.
Yeah.
But I've always found that that's what makes people grow. That's what makes ideas grow. That's what makes everything. That's where you're just so close to you're so close and don't know how close you are to making real changes. And I think we're doing that for people every day now with what we're doing.
I love how you tie those multiple practices together with, I guess, like the common denominator being, the cellular efficiency, right? And you can speak to that in a multitude of directions, and therefore a multitude of practitioners and whatnot. So, which is great, because often as a patient, sometimes you feel like your healthcare is a little bit fragmented, right? And symptoms over here aren't being discussed with symptoms over there when they're probably related. I'm one body, so the root cause has to be similar. Okay, now talk to me a little bit about the commercialization, Dr. Seeds. Is this something that the FDA is going to wrap their hands around? It's my understanding that peptides are not patentable. And if that is the case, I wonder about, I guess, I look at industries that move. They typically move because money talks, right? When there's money to be made, innovation occurs faster, progress gets fast tracked, and et cetera, et cetera. So are there commercial barriers? If so, what are they? Is the FDA concerned or excited? And how does that landscape look?
Well, I think the FDA is just trying to do, they have their issues with how you have to present a new molecule or a new, everything's considered a drug. You have to go through all of the steps to present anything like that. But any of these peptides are patentable. That's absolutely possible. I mean, they're all patentable.
Okay.
And it's being done. There are multiple startups and venture capitalists that are already investing in, and that's this if it's not already starting, this is going to be the biggest influx in capital, I think, that we've ever seen, because it has such an influence on so many aspects of health. And in particular, I think the more that you can work towards working on some of these peptides that we have and we're utilizing, little things can be done to change them, and they can be patented into different peptides.
Okay.
And they're still effective, and there's from that side of it, absolutely. I mean, I think it comes down to just having the right team and the right approach to, what are you doing? So in your world, I imagine, it's having the IP for something. It's having something that may already be patented, that you can bring to the table, and then create the story, and then create the models that just show changes, because that creates fever, that creates discussion, that creates an influence in, and you guys seem to work really well in those places of generating stories, it's about continuing that conversation. It's about, well, how many stories can you give me? Mm-hmm. Well, this is where it never ends. I mean, because it doesn't. So if you have the right team of people, the right investment group that understands that, you've got a team that is putting together, I mean, this is really endless. I mean, you just pick where you want to go and you go for it, and you can start that story. And this world of anti-aging, that's the story. It's right there. It's innovating these signaling agents and showing, just showing you pick where you want to go. And I mean, there's so many places you could do this in, but let's just say I pick a category and I say, okay, I'm going to use a small animal study to show, number one, that I can do this. And by changing this peptide a certain way, I can do this. And look what I'm doing and look how I've changed it. And then that starts the conversation, that gets people interested, that shows, oh my gosh, there's something new here in, in what you're doing to approach tissue repair, or who knows, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Any application. Okay. Look, Dr. Seeds, I told you I would steal you for 30 minutes, and obviously we blasted past that. But this is fascinating. It's been fascinating, and I'm really grateful you had the time to come on the show and speak to my audience and speak to me directly, because last time I saw you, I was a spectator at your events and I had a blast. I was texting my wife the whole time thinking, just joking around with her, saying, I'm going back to medical school. I'm doing it. But it was super fun.
That's awesome, because that's what I want to tell you. That's what's so exciting when you see, you got to understand, all these physicians coming to learn are practicing physicians. They're all busy. They've all done all of these incredible things to stay in their lane. And all of a sudden they're stepping out of that comfort zone to learn more, take more time, to go down these steps. I mean, that's a huge investment by every one of those individuals. But that's got to mean something. That's a story in itself of what it's telling you.
Yeah.
That there's something we're really missing out there. And I think also, a lot of it comes down to a lot of the physicians. And it's interesting how we're seeing so many younger ones and older ones at the same time, like just out of residency, or some that are bypassing that process and just coming and jumping into with some incredible backgrounds in cellular medicine and from the PhD side. That's where I think this comes together, where we are really becoming a powerful entity.
Yeah. And what you're speaking to there is a shift in sentiment, right? Which is something that any investor pays attention to, any smart investor pays attention to. And you see a shift in sentiment, whether it's, whether it's capital, whether it's brain capital, but there's a shift of energy moving to one direction simultaneously. Things start to move, and they move fast. And that's what I'm seeing here. And that's what I saw in Las Vegas, and continue to have seen since then. So I'm going to continue this conversation. I know you're busy, but I'm going to keep bugging your office to get you back in here, maybe a few months down the road, and check in. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much. As always, if you enjoy this content, please hit subscribe. I'd love to have you on the team. And if you want to take the next step and go a bit deeper with my content, I publish a free weekly newsletter every Friday where I debrief my portfolio. I distill the top lessons I've uncovered from the guests I've had on this show every week. And I talk about sectors and industries that I think are poised to move, areas that I'm looking for opportunity, and places that I'm allocating capital. I love writing it. We publish every Friday. The link is right beneath this video. Love to have you join the tribe.